ashes of liberty. They surrendered their guns, their voices, their faith. What was left to lose? Prologue, the last ballot. In the year 2024, the United States stumbled into a pivotal election that would forever alter the course of its history. Through cunning manipulation of voting systems in key states, the Heritage Foundation, the intellectual and ideological backbone of the Republican Party, secured sweeping control of the government. What seemed like a triumphant victory for conservative values quickly spiraled into an iron grip on the nation's future. The unraveling began with one shocking decision: the repeal of the Second Amendment. The very party that had long championed the right to bear arms declared firearms a threat to national stability. Weapons in the hands of dissidents, they claimed, posed the greatest danger to our unified vision. The disarmed public could only watch helplessly as protests were crushed under the boots of an unseen military force that had been quietly growing since the late 20th century. This force, now fully loyal to the Heritage Foundation, neutralized any resistance with ruthless efficiency. Chapter 1: The Death of Dissent. By 2028, elections were no longer a beacon of democracy, but a hollow spectacle of digital manipulation. Voting was compulsory, but the results were predetermined. Citizens cast ballots through an app designed by a government-contracted company. The illusion of choice masked the reality. Dissenting voices were systematically erased. Freedom of speech was the next casualty. Speaking out against governmental changes became an act of treason. Journalists who dared to investigate or criticize the regime disappeared into secret prisons, never to be seen again. Social media platforms were either dismantled or absorbed into the government's surveillance apparatus. Any post, comment, or meme that hinted at dissent was flagged, traced, and punished. Citizens whispered in fear, knowing that even casual conversations could lead to arrest. Public gatherings were outlawed unless sanctioned by the state. In schools, children recited pledges to the New Republic, a sanitized vision of the United States that erased its democratic roots. History textbooks were rewritten, presenting the rise of the Heritage Foundation as a natural evolution of the Founding Fathers' ideals. Chapter 2: A Godless Nation. Perhaps the cruelest betrayal came against the evangelical Christians who had been instrumental in the party's rise to power. The Republican leadership, once draped in religious rhetoric, turned on organized religion entirely. Faith, they declared, was a divisive force. Churches were shuttered, and religious gatherings were banned. Clergy who resisted were branded as seditionists. Crosses, Bibles, and other symbols of worship were burned in public ceremonies meant to signify the unification of the people under one state. Other religions fared no better. Mosques, synagogues, temples, any place of worship became a target. Faith was replaced with allegiance to the state. The new doctrine, enforced through relentless propaganda, declared that the only truth was the government's truth. Chapter 3: The Shadow of 2199. By 2199, the United States still bore its name, but it was a husk of its former self. The landscape was marked by decayed cities, abandoned highways, and scattered settlements where survivors scavenged for scraps. The once great nation aspired to the status of a third-world country. The government, now a hereditary oligarchy, ruled from a fortress city in what had once been Washington, D.C. The Constitution, once preserved under glass as a relic of a bygone era, now destroyed, served as a grim reminder of what was lost. Citizens, numbering in the tens of millions rather than hundreds, labored in state-controlled factories or toiled in barren fields. Education was a distant memory. Generations had grown up without knowledge of the freedoms their ancestors had once cherished. They lived in fear of drones that patrolled the skies and soldiers who enforced the regime's decrees. Yet in the shadows of this desolation, hope flickered. Secret gatherings of scavengers and dreamers whispered stories of democracy, liberty, and justice. They passed down tales of Constitution and the Founding Fathers like myths. To them, the idea of the United States was a legend worth fighting for, even if their struggle seemed impossible. The final irony lay in the government's greatest weakness, its need for absolute control. For every oppressive measure it enacted, it sowed the seeds of resistance. And while the land was broken, the human spirit remained unyielding. In the darkness of 2199, as the embers of freedom threatened to ignite once more, one question loomed. Could the experiment in democracy rise again? Or would its ashes forever mark the end of the greatest promise in human history? Epilogue, the Lost Creed. Etched into the ruins of an old courthouse were the words of Abraham Lincoln. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Beneath it, someone had scrawled a desperate plea. Is it too late to hope? The end. This is a cautionary tale of what happens when democracy is manipulated and freedoms are sacrificed in the name of control. Under unchecked Republican leadership, as depicted in this bleak vision of the future, America becomes a shell of its former self. Devoid of liberty, truth, and hope, let this brief yet concise story serve as a stark warning. Democracy is fragile, and the cost of apathy is the loss of everything we hold dear.